does Drew Brees rank among best all-time quarterbacks?
I think he should be considered for top 5. It's not definitive, but he should definitely warrant consideration. I will tell you this right now. I take him over Brett Favre. I tell you that right now.
Takes one of us.
That's all that matters. That's the one vote that matters. I'll take him over. I'll take him over. Well, especially against him, yes. The point that I'm trying to make to you is that it would definitely be above Brett Favre. I am aware of the fact that Drew Brees, most of his success has obviously come playing indoors. But when you consider the laudables that are attached to him, reading through his progressions, understanding the game of football, the high intellect, him being undersized, the pinpoint passes, most of the time standing in the pocket, being immobile, not being somebody that can make plays with his legs. When you consider all of those things, the reality is that just like he plays indoors, well, guess what? So do the defensive players that go after him. They're indoors. They're not impeded by inclement weather. They have the freedom and the conditions, the ideal conditions to go after him with the level of fervor they're capable of doing. And yet somehow, some way, this guy religiously completes over 67% of his passes, sometimes in excess of 70% of his passes. He's had several 5,000-yard seasons, religiously throws for over 4,000 yards. And let's keep in mind that he's been quarterbacking for a New Orleans Saints team that Sean Payton, for all of his greatness as an offensive mind, it's very rare that he's given Drew Brees a defense to rely upon. Last year, we praised New Orleans religiously because for the first time in a while, we had seen Drew Brees and the Saints offense with an actual defense to rely upon. Now, the reason I don't get on Sean Payton nearly enough is because, let's say, for example, in Pittsburgh, where we're complaining about the secondary. Well, you got Mike Tomlin that has a defensive background as a defensive coordinator, as a defensive back coach. So when you have problems on the defensive end of the floor or defensive side of the field, it's a problem because it doesn't vibe with what your signature is. In the case of Sean Payton, he was an offensive mind. And religiously, with Drew Brees as his quarterback, they've been one of the elite offensive teams in the game. So I look at it, and I don't get on him about that, but they need a defense. But Drew Brees has carried this franchise on his shoulders for more than a decade. And when you consider that, and his numbers now, the all-time leading passer in NFL history, and you consider the percentages, I think that you have to look at him as one of the top 5 quarterbacks of all time.
He's not top 5. I don't think he's in the conversation for top 5. He's in the conversation for top 10. And let me start by saying, congratulations, Drew Brees. I love Drew Brees like everyone loves Drew Brees. And you hate to do this segment the day after he sets the record, right?
Absolutely.
Because you don't want to be negative when a guy has this is a moment for congratulations. But if we're talking about ranking, guys, I know he's a great guy. Like, if you got to run somewhere, leave your kids somewhere, you'd be like, hey, Drew, can you watch my kids? He's that kind of guy. But is he a top 5 quarterback? Even top 10. Look, here are guys who are clearly better than Drew Brees, or greater. Tom Brady, who played in the same era and was better, clearly. Peyton Manning, same thing. Aaron Rodgers, same thing. These are contemporaries of Drew Brees. Nowhere on earth do you find a single person say Drew Brees better than those guys. That's 3 right there. And in the previous era, Joe Montana, 5 championships. He was the best. He competed against Dan Marino, who was considered the most talented passer of all time. John Elway, 2-time Super Bowl champ. And Brett Favre. You say not Brett Favre. Brett Favre, like the way you think about Patrick Mahomes now, when you see that, you go, that's just different. Brett Favre is one of those all-time talents who was mistakenly called for a while the greatest quarterback ever. He never was. But he was among the greatest talents and certainly a top 10 quarterback. Those 7 are in. That's over. Now you got 3 more slots.
Don't say Brett Favre is over.
It's over.
It's not over.
Troy Aikman, who, by the way, was a very accurate passer with 3 Super Bowl championships, and like Drew Brees, usually considered the 2nd or 3rd, something like that, best quarterback of his era. Jim Kelly, same sort of thing. Forget about Otto Graham and like Johnny Unitas pre-Super Bowl era. I'm just talking about Super Bowl era. Drew Brees may be in the top 10, maybe not. Certainly not top 5. The fact that he got all the passing records has to do with the fact that he's an all-time great quarterback playing in a passing era. He's stayed healthy. He's had an offensive coach, and he's played in a dome. Those factors combined with a great quarterback to give him all the records. Not give him. He didn't get anything. He took all those records. Good for him. But in the previous era, he was number 3 behind Brady and Peyton. And in this era, he's number 3 behind Brady and Rodgers. And so when you're like the third best of your era, there are enough eras all time. You may not be top 10. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. The fact that he's had a long enough career, if push came to shove, I'd say, yeah, Drew Brees is top 10, like right around 9 or 10.
I think you missed Warren Moon
He's in there.
in that discussion, because here's how we rate or rank quarterbacks. 1, Super Bowls, right? How good were your teams? How many rings, how many championships do you have? Drew Brees only has 1. He only went to 1. The other thing is measurables. The other thing is talent, right? The reason we talk about Aaron Rodgers the way we do is not because he's won a ton of Super Bowls or his team has a ton of Super Bowl rings. It's the way it looks. It's the way it comes off of his hand. It's the feeling that he gives us when we watch him play. Drew Brees doesn't do that. Though Drew Brees is deadly accurate, he doesn't have measurables that are off the charts. When you look at Drew Brees, you sometimes feel like, you know what? I know people that look like that. The dude that does my accounting, the dude that does my taxes looks like Drew Brees. When we see Aaron Rodgers, when we see Patrick Mahomes, those dudes look different. And I do believe that Drew Brees deserves to be.
Wait, what? Drew Brees looks like the guy that does your accounting, but Aaron Rodgers looks different?
Yeah, and I'm not talking about.
athlete.
I'm not talking about the way he looks aesthetically. I'm talking about the way he performs on the field. When you see when you see a ball come out of Aaron Rodgers' hands, it's different. When you see a ball comes out of Drew Brees' hands, you're like, oh, that was a good throw. It was on point. There was nothing special about it. And so I think when we look at Drew Brees that way, that's why we don't put him in the conversation of best ever. That's why we don't.
You're okay with putting Brett Favre in that conversation?
Absolutely am.
Really?
Because Brett Favre was that type of talent. Brett Favre was that type of energy bringer. Now, I do think Drew Brees is one of the best players to never win an MVP.